The White Bear Micropub on Southbourne Grove is a proud supporter of AFC Bournemouth and sponsor of all departments. Head to the Bear for real ales, locally produced food and plenty of good conversations about the cherries. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.
Here come the cherries and we're heading for the top of the tree. Bournemouth is a team that's going to show Division 3. Here come the leaders and the scorers at the Saturday, showing how to win the Southern way. So we sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. While you're out there winning, hear the shouting and the singing. We sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. Here come the cherries, here come the cherries, here come the cherries, number one.
Hello and welcome to All Departments. Our Cuptastic Cherries snuck into the fifth round of the FA Cup for the first time in 27 years on Saturday, with a hard-won 2-1 victory over determined South Coast rivals Portsmouth. Here to review our latest brush with the requisite romance is my neighbour, Mark Piper.
Mark, welcome to All Departments.
Thank you very much.
So, we drove to Fratton Park yesterday and chatted about the perilous nature of the tie, and I don't think anyone who saw that game could argue that, well, Portsmouth deserved a draw at the very least, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone's kind of probably not particularly surprised. It was always going to be a tough match as a derby. I think we probably came a bit closer than we wanted to, but we came through it. We got there, did the job.
We're in the next round.
We are.
Eddie made the usual wholesale changes to the starting 11. Only Adam Smith was retained from the previous league game against Sunderland, which can be a frustration, I think, for some people. Thinks we should take the cups as seriously as we take the league. But the upside of that was, certainly for me, was to see Tommy Elphick return to the team. And, well, I've really missed his goalpost routine and all of those things. I mean, it was great to see him back, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Where would he be? I mean, you know, superstition is everything. So good to have him back in the team. You know, it'll be interesting to see if he makes his opportunities to get back in the first team. But, you know, nice to have him there, nice to know that he's fit. And I think yesterday he did all right. He not particularly stand out, but I think he got back in the game and, you know, did his 60 or 70 minutes, and probably good for him to just see that through.
Yeah, I think that's the obviously want to win the game, but from a personal point of view for him, is to get those minutes under his belt, return to the team, and yeah, like you say, he's going to have to now compete for a place in the centre of defence, where there is quite a bit of competition, despite us willing the manager to sign another central defender. I mean, if you put Francis in, he's got 5 to choose from, so yeah, Tommy's going to probably find a way back in at some point, but mainly his main chance will come through injuries or suspensions to others. So yeah, I thought you did all right yesterday. A bit rusty, but it's only to be expected. So yeah, good to have him back. Now, when the game kicked off, it was immediately obvious that Portsmouth were right up for it, and they had all the play and pressed us without a moment's peace, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. I mean, I think, to be honest, it looked like a bit of a reversal at times. You know, they looked like the way that we normally play, and we distinctly looked a bit lacking, really. I think we found that pretty hard to deal with. And I think that, you know, clearly we had a team that haven't really played together. And it showed, and they really pushed us, and you can't argue they had much the better of the first half. Plenty of sort of penetration through the middle, I think. And yeah, it was clearly tough for our guys, I think.
Yeah, I think the area that I thought was most glaringly open was the midfield. O'Kane and McDonald, again, haven't played that much football recently.
Yeah.
I don't know if Paul Cook, their manager, made a lot of changes. I get the feeling he didn't. And So their players, despite playing 3 leagues below us, are playing week in, week out. It just didn't look like we were quite on it. And I'll come on to Wanai Turbe in a little while. And we seem to surrender that part of the pitch, not voluntarily, but just because of their pressing and determination. And we did look, well, if you were a non-football fan who had come along for the day and you did not know which was the Premier League team and which was the League Two team, and the evidence of the first half, you wouldn't have been able to say, you probably would have chosen Portsmouth.
No, I think so. I think, and aside from the fact that Portsmouth seem to physically look like League Two players, I don't know what it is, but they're a bit bulky and they're a bit, they're big lads, and so they kind of have this. They look a bit like League Two, but you're right in the way that they played. They certainly they looked a bit quicker to the ball than us. They looked a bit. They were certainly up for it, and like you say, I think in the middle of the field. We expressed surprise in the car when you sort of read the lineup out. Not necessarily surprised, but it was very attacking. King, Murray, Graben, Iturbe, and we had something that was kind of akin to a 4-2-4 more than anything else. And that showed, didn't it? That absolutely showed. There was really nothing for us going on in the midfield. To be honest, I can't say that O'Kane and McDonald particularly had bad matches. I didn't see anything that particularly worried me. But there was, it was a big space for them to marshal, wasn't it? And Robertson, McNulty, and Bennett kind of turned us inside out as far as that went. So. Tough game for those guys, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think like I said, being out of the first team, Kane's come on a few times. McDonald, we haven't seen much of him, but not getting regular football, I think that has a big impact when you come in for what's essentially a one-off game, or a one-off game every 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. As long as we keep progressing. Yeah. It's difficult to get immediately back up to speed. Now, they had a couple of, events before we really got any kind of effective impact on the game. They had a penalty appeal, although it was a bit maybe chancing their arm, which will soon become obvious was not an intended pun. Ben Davies took a corner and it was missed at the near post by all of our players and their players that attacked the ball. It seemed to go over them and it bounced next to Josh King, I think it was, and went up and hit his arm, and then he booted it out. Fratton Park, because it's an old stadium and the seats we were sat in were just bolted on to the terracing. The sight lines and stuff obviously isn't going to be quite what you get in a newer stadium, and so I didn't really seem to have a great view of anything that happened yesterday, although I could see enough to enjoy the game. And I didn't realise that had hit his arm until I saw it on the clip that I watched on the internet in the evening. Do you think they had much claim for a penalty there?
I don't think so, really. Like you, I was in row X, right? So I wasn't particularly close to the action, but certainly seeing the replay on Match of the Day there, it's like many of these things. He's not. The ball's come to his hand rather than anything else, right? He looks like he's taken his hand away. He's trying to get it behind his back, get it out of the way. So I don't think Portsmouth can really kind of complain about anything on that front. I think. I'll give it to him. There was no intent there whatsoever, so you've got to pass that one by. Yeah,
and we didn't hear anything about it. There wasn't much appealing, which is one of the reasons I didn't even realise it was a potential penalty appeal. And, there was no mention of it in the post-match or anything like that. So,
but to coin a phrase, you've seen them given.
Seen them given, and you could argue that it hitting his arm, despite it not being deliberate, helped him to then be able to clear the ball, because it was kind of whoever got there first, luckily for us it was him, was going to be able to do what they wanted. In other words, if it had been one of their players, they would have quite easily had a very good chance to shoot on goal, and the fact that it hit his arm and kind of fell quite kindly.
Fell to his feet, right, and he punted it out. So, well, you know, like I said, you win some, you lose some, and I don't think anyone can really complain about that.
No, I was more than happy that wasn't given. And then McNulty had a shot which was really well saved by Federici. Juan Turbe lost the ball in the midfield, and
again,
but and McNulty swept forward, and he was suddenly in quite a lot of room in the middle of our half, and I think he thought, well, I'll have a pop here, and Federici got down to save to his right. It was a good save, and we struggled a bit yesterday in the match, but I thought Federici was one of our standout players. He made the things he had to do yesterday. He did well, didn't he?
I'd call him solid. Right, he had a solid game. Now, you know, that was the one standout point, that save, I think. And you're right, McNulty and Roberts kind of appearing in space in the middle of the field was a fairly recurring theme, I think. And certainly you watch that back. Distan stands off. Doesn't really close him down, gives him the space to get a shot away. And Federici, it was a great save. I'll imagine it's tough for a keeper if you're not playing week in, week out. It must be pretty hard to make sure you're on top of your game. And I think he got down well. It was clearly going in. He had to make the save. So credit to him. And for the rest of the game, like you say, I think there weren't too many things for him to do.
There was
particularly.
There was a couple of free kicks, wasn't there? I think they were in the second half, and one bounced in front of him, and he got it. I thought we were going to see a repeat of the Schwan Jalal blunder from a few seasons ago. It was that in, and another one. It was above his head, but he managed to hold on. And like you said, he was solid, and there was no question of any flapping from him, which is exactly what it was.
That's what you want from
a goalkeeper, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So 4 marks to him, and I'm sure he'll be playing in the next round. And then we did hit the post. The aforementioned Wanai Turby. The ball was headed out from a corner. I think O'Kane took the corner, and Iturbe was placed on the edge of the box, and he saw his chance, and he hit a decent shot and hit the post. Unlucky. It's a shame it didn't go in. It would have been obviously a big boost for him personally, and it's always nice, obviously, if we score the first goal. That doesn't always work out. But that said, that was his best moment yesterday. He did a couple of other bits of skill. I mean, you can tell he's got quality, but he didn't look like he had much clue at all against West Ham when he came on, and he struggled again yesterday, didn't he? Yeah,
he seems like a bit of a square peg in a round hole, doesn't he? He's like you say, he's got a bit of quality. The way he hit that shot yesterday, sort of hit it with the outside of his left boot. I think you'll find the keeper actually tipped it onto the post. Right, it was a great shot. Other than that, I tell you what, he had a few moments. One standout moment for me actually, and I don't know if you saw it, but he had a moment where he was on the edge of the D. The ball had gone high. The Portsmouth defender, I don't know who that was, but had jumped a little bit early. And Iturbe he timed his jump to perfection. Now, he's not a big guy, right? I'm surprised that Willow doesn't call him the wee man more often, because he favours that of Matt Ritchie. And actually, I checked on Wikipedia. Matt Ritchie's half an inch taller, right? And but Iturbe kind of got up way beyond where I thought he should have done. And had a very deliberate header down to Murray's feet. And actually that stood out for me. As well as that shot, I think that header was... ultimately I think Murray kind of put it wide, but that was... that showed a bit of quality there. But you're right, I just think in general in the way that we play, it's not quite clear how he fits in. He's clearly capable of bits of individual skill. Unfortunately, quite often they ended up with him getting a bit robbed and muscled off the ball yesterday. But in Eddie we trust. Maybe he's got that plan for him, and maybe he's gonna sort of hone those skills. And I think the language thing, is going to be difficult for him, right? Apparently, he doesn't speak that much English. It's got to be difficult for him, I think.
Yeah, I think his English is probably better than my Spanish or Italian, but he's going to be asked to absorb a lot of information in a new environment very quickly, and then that's going to be tested when he's playing. And it's really, really hard. And we've only got him on loan to the end of the season on the strength of the 2 times he's been on the pitch for us, which isn't enough to judge him. Yeah. You'd say, well, we won't sign him. But that said, if Eddie is to get the best out of him, he might need... Well, he may not be able to do that during the loan period. It might need longer. So if he doesn't decide to sign him, then you can say, well, okay, it wasn't fitting in, it wasn't working out, Eddie knows what he's doing, and that's it. If he is to sign him, and he still is not looking the player that we hoped he would be, then you think, well, maybe that will be different come next season, because Eddie will have had more time to work with him and have had pre-season and all the rest of it. So we'll wait and see. It was a shame, because kind of hoped he would shine a bit yesterday, being a player who has so far in his career looked like he could really perform at the highest level, or so I'm told, playing against players from the 3rd, 4th tier of English football. And he scored a hat-trick in that Development League game in the week, didn't he?
Yeah.
And but then that doesn't factor in all the other stuff, and I don't know if he's played in games like that in South America. I'm sure there's intimidating atmospheres there and in Italy. But Fratton Park, FA Cup, the fans are really close to the pitch, the opposition are really up for it and all that. It's perhaps just not something that he's used to, and it takes time to get used to that sort of thing. And he won't have to play at Fratton Park in that situation every week.
No.
But it's a whole different style of football. I did notice him trying to track back and all the rest of it yesterday a bit more than he did against West Ham. But yeah, I feel sorry for him in a way, because he's, not too sorry, because he's obviously getting well paid and all the rest of it. But
he's doing all right.
I think, sort of from a doing his job point of view, it's an awfully big change, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I imagine it's just this kind of, there's always this kind of stereotype, right, of the continental Flash Harry turning up and being taught a lesson about the English League too, and I kind of feel that's true to some extent. And like you say, he's not going to have to play against Portsmouth and that kind of opposition every week, and maybe against some of the Premier opposition, it might be a bit of a different story. Undoubtedly, I felt better about him yesterday than I did after the West Ham game, when he looked totally lost. Didn't really know what he was doing. Not surprising. He was kind of brand new, just out of the packaging at that point. So give him time to progress. I think I saw a post from him on Instagram, thanks to the magic of Google Translate. He says I'm gaining pace, I think it was, is what he said. So I think he knows that there's work to do and there's time to improve. And I guess to your point, it's just the question is, how much time has he got? He's probably not going to get too many first team starts. He's going to be relying on substitute appearances. Is that enough time for us to really see what he's capable of? Maybe not.
Yeah, I think that were we to go on a great run and secure our safety with 5-6 games left, then we might see him starting a few games. But yeah, like you say, at the moment we're just too close to the relegation zone for comfort to be taking risks like that. And,
yeah.
It may not work out, but who knows. Anyway, right at the end of the first half, Portsmouth scored, which was probably deserved, the way they played and the way we played in the first half. The long ball out of defence, McNulty beat Bailey Cargill. I thought I had a good game overall, to the header, knocked it into the path of Bennett, who then played it back to McNulty. He crossed it low across the 6-yard box, and it was missed by, or they didn't get there, Distan and Elphick, and then Smith went to the ball, leaving Roberts, who was one of the players who was the authors of our downfall when we played Huddersfield in that playoff semi-final a few years ago. And he had a little bit of time and space there and had a touch and finished it well. It was a diagonal shot. I didn't think Federici had much chance, and it was kind of coming, wasn't it?
I don't think anyone had any complaints at half time. You're right, it was pretty much coming. We've seen it. I wouldn't want to say that Distan was at fault, but certainly it was fairly half-hearted from him again. He kind of stood off Bennett, and Bennett was a threat all afternoon, right? I mean, he really kind of caused us a few problems. And watching it back, I kind of think Distan sort of half-heartedly stuck a leg out. And I just didn't really feel. I thought if that was someone else, they might have cut that pass out. And then, like I say, Roberts just kind of found himself in acres of space. By the time McNulty got the cross in, Smith was a good sort of 3 or 4 feet off of him, and he had plenty of time. Exactly as you say, you can't blame Federici for that. You'd hope that there aren't too many strikers that will miss from that range. Although maybe we'll come to that. But I like you say, I think it was coming. I think there was quite a few failures all over the pitch there, and no one was complaining when we went in 1-0 down.
No, it was the fact that Distan and Elphick didn't get to the ball, and it was able to travel all the way along the edge of the 6-yard box, left Smith with the decision to either try and intercept the ball or to stay with Roberts, and he decided to go to the ball, and unfortunately didn't get there either, which then left Roberts in the space, and that's what led to the goal. Distan, he's had an unusual, funny season in some ways. I know he hasn't played much in the first team for quite a while, but when he first got in the team at the start of the season, I was really impressed. And I was looking at him thinking, this is the best central defender I've ever seen play for us. But
do you know what? I think I'm trying to remember. Was it Villa that he played against? And I'm pretty sure the word I used was imperious, because he was a big guy. He really imposed himself on the game, and like you said, I mean, you kind of thought, wow, this is a bit of quality that's come here. I don't think we've seen that from him since, to be honest. Maybe that's a lack of games that he's getting, but like I said, I thought his performance yesterday was a bit half-hearted. I didn't really see a great deal of effort from him. I know he's getting on a bit, but you'd like to think he can still put in a shift.
Yeah, he started to slightly fall, in my estimation, quite soon after the start of the season, when I'd watch goals back from games that we were losing and realised that quite often he was not getting there when he should, or wasn't there at all. And I started to think, the things he's doing well. It's almost the things that he's not doing that are the problem. And I still think he's a good player. And you say he's 38 and he's doing well to be playing in the Premier League at 38. But he certainly hasn't got the kind of the glow around him in my eyes that he had at the start of the season. But hopefully he'll continue to do a job for us. But anyway, that was it. Never a good time to concede. Obviously, it's we conceded at Sunderland just on the stroke of half time as well, and weren't able to finish them off in the second half. Luckily, we did manage to turn it around yesterday. But like you said, it was a fair enough scoreline at half time. And before we go on to talk about the second half, just wanted to touch on the experience at Fratton Park. I mean, I mentioned the seats bolted on to the terracing. It's a throwback, Fratton Park, to... I mean, there's plenty of grounds like this in the lower leagues that we've had plenty of opportunities to visit. We've got a new stadium now. Fratton Park's quite a big ground, obviously, for the lower leagues, and they get big crowds. It was full yesterday. It was nearly 19,000. But it's a throwback to football as it used to be in terms of the ground is like 4 stands that are all completely different. You're really close to the pitch.
Yeah.
You've got the
stanchions
coming down in front of the seats, and there's a very in some ways intimidating atmosphere. But I mean, all of that, as I list it off, is I think a plus. I quite enjoyed all that.
Do you know what? It's one of those grounds that I think is great to visit. I'm not sure I'd want to be there every week, but as a ground to visit, as a ground with a bit of character to it. That was pretty good. Like you say, you kind of go the back of the Milton end there, and you got that close little alleyway that we were in. I'm thinking, this would be interesting in the dark. After a particularly controversial game. A bit of sort of almost chicken wire chain link fencing up the top there. I kind of enjoyed it. Like I say, it's the kind of ground to visit to sort of. Feels like a true home of football rather than some kind of soulless stadium. I thought it was all right. I mean, it was definitely interesting in terms of trying to find your seat. I mean, I don't know how you fared where you were, but every time I sort of shifted off to go to the loo or go anywhere, I suddenly found that my place was taken by someone else. I was right back in the very back row. So I had a decent view from there, but I love those old grounds. I think they're definitely interesting places to go, and like I said, I think if you were going there every week, you might know about it. The other thing, to be honest, that I felt was the wind. I was frozen at the back of the stand there, so there was definitely a bit of a chill wind going on. But like I say, great place to visit.
All Departments is sponsored by the White Bear Micro Pub on Southbourne Grove, the perfect pre- and post-game venue to chat about the game, and only a 25-minute walk to the ground, or there's a bus stop right outside. Wear your AFCB shirt on any match day and receive 30p off each pint. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.
So into the second half, really, until Eddie made a few changes, it was more of the same. Portsmouth continued where they left off, and they had a couple of chances. We mentioned the free kicks that Federici held. Ben Davies took one of those. Bennett played Roberts in, and he shot across the goal, and it was asking for one of their players to get there and stab it in, but luckily nobody could. And I mean, Eddie's been praised subsequently for his tactical acumen in bringing on Mark Pugh and Matt Ritchie, and there's no question over Eddie's ability as a football manager, but that particular move, or certainly I think taking One Eye Turbo off and throwing both of those on, are definitely one of them. You kind of, I don't think there are too many Bournemouth fans who couldn't have guessed that was what was going to happen.
I think it was fairly obvious. I mean, if you've ever played Football Manager, you're right. I mean, it was fairly obvious as to what we needed to do, and you're right. It turned the game around. I mean, just to go back to that effort that Roberts had. I mean, that was an escape for us. So you take a look, that ball from Bennett straight through was perfectly placed. Got to Roberts, and he stumbled a bit as he got towards Federici, and I think if he managed to stay upright just a little bit, he might have been able to slot that in. Like I say, certainly if there had been any blue shirts in the area, someone could have toe poked that, and we would have been 2 down, and that might have been.
That would have been it.
That would have been it, right? In terms of the change, I mean, absolutely, it was night and day, wasn't it? It was as soon as Ritchie and Pugh were on, there was crosses pinging in from all sides, and like I say, maybe it was a fairly obvious move for him to make, but there's no question that was the absolute turning point of the game, and Portsmouth didn't really know how to deal with that. I thought King moving into the centre proved a good move. And yeah, ultimately, it did the job for us.
Yeah. So he took One-Eye Turbo off. No arguments with that. He took Glenn Murray off. I'm not sure if I'm the only person that thinks this, but I was actually quite surprised he took Murray off because it was the kind of game that I thought suited Murray. It was a bit of a battle, and he doesn't tend to score beautiful goals. They all seem to be scrambled over the line, or but he's just on the spot. And yeah, I thought he was unlucky to go off. I have subsequently seen him criticised on various platforms for what's described as another poor performance. But I don't know. I mean, what did you make of his performance yesterday before he went off?
I'm just not sure he gets the service, does he? Or certainly in that game, like you say, the sorts of goals that he scores. I don't know. He always seems he's buzzing around a bit. He's there or thereabouts, and he was fairly anonymous. I thought at times yesterday. You didn't see an awful lot of him, and yeah, I'm just not sure we can quite give him the service that he really wants. Was I surprised to see him go off? Not particularly. I think maybe Eddie wants to get grabbing some game time, and get him fit for starts in the Prem. Maybe it certainly didn't do us any harm. Let's face it. Murray's one of those players, isn't he? Probably a bit like Marmite. You either love him or hate him. Well, I don't know. Does anyone love him? I don't know.
They loved him at Crystal Palace. They were singing his name when we came down. They'll probably be singing it again on Tuesday night. Yeah, he hasn't definitely found that kind of warmth from the Bournemouth fans. I think he's largely looked upon as an all right centre forward, but nothing special, and there have been some question marks over his attitude, but it all seems to stem back to that day when he was late arriving and Eddie just said, well, he can't have that, and dropped him. But there hasn't really been anything else. There's certainly been no Lee Tomlin style toys coming out of the pram. So yeah, I mean, I think that he's probably got some unfair negative comments in his time at the club, and although he's not going to be our go-to guy going forward, and will be slipping down the pecking order rapidly when Wilson gets fit and all that, but I think he's probably, well, from my opinion, is slightly unjustified, some of the criticism that he gets.
I think so, and you kind of wonder from his perspective, is he good enough to start in a championship team? I mean, clearly here he's going to be behind Grab, and he's going to be behind Afobe. He's possibly behind King. Is he going to get much game time? Can you see him itching to go elsewhere and get a start? Probably. Not that necessarily excuses attitude, but he can do a job, can't he? I think. I think he can be tolerated if that's not damning with faint praise.
Well, hopefully he'll score a couple more important goals before the end of the season. Yeah. But like you said, the game, it just seemed to immediately turn once those two came on, Pugh and Ritchie, and of course King went up front, so we had genuine pace up front, and Grabham's no slouch, is he? And we just were back in it, and then we did score. And I was obviously, with everybody else, relieved and thought, well, we'll at least get a replay out of this. There was quite a bit of the game left. The goal itself came from a free kick. Ben Davies fouled Mark Pugh on the right-hand side of the box. We'd had a couple like this in the first half at the other end, but they didn't come to anything. But this one was straight out of the coaching manual. Again, crossed it, and the next thing I knew, it was in the net. I thought it had gone straight in. My 5-year-old son, who came with us, said to me, "That's King. King got his head on it." And I thought, no, he didn't touch it. But I'd overlooked the fact that my son hasn't entered the stage of wearing varifocal glasses like myself. And he was absolutely right. Josh King, right was the first person anywhere near the ball, got his head to it, and sort of a backwards header at the near post, and went past Fulton, and we were back in it, weren't we?
Yeah, he helped it along. And like you say, it was almost kind of a carbon copy of one we had in the first half, where actually it was Murray that got his head to it and went about a foot wide of the post. So, yeah, it's one of those things. I guess the question for me is, would it have gone in if King hadn't got his head to it? I think King just kind of helped it around Fulton's fingers. So I'm not going to complain. Never the prettiest goal to score, but in situations like that, you're going to take that on you. You're absolutely going to take that on.
Absolutely. And we were then kind of on the ascendancy, and with 20 minutes to go, it was like, well, the next goal's going to win this game. And I didn't mention when we talked about the substitutions originally, it is such a boost when you look at the bench, when you see the team sheet and see players, well, the three that came on yesterday were Francis, Ritchie and Pugh, and them coming on the pitch is going to strengthen us in those positions because they're first, they're in the A team, as it were. And it's not an experience. Well, at times this season we haven't even been able to name what looks like a very strong bench. So it's just fantastic, and it worked out really well yesterday. Then, before we scored the winning goal, we had another clear-cut chance. Lewis Graben's chance is what I'm referring to, and this was one that's going to be added to the Lewis Graben charge sheet by those who'd like to to have a pop at him. And there wasn't really any getting away from it with this one. Kane and Ritchie had a little exchange of passes. And Ritchie crossed it in. The ball reached Josh King, who first time with his back to goal played it in to Grab's path, and he looked certain to score, didn't he?
He did. Do you know? There in the moment, I was among the hordes that had my head in my hands, thinking Grab's what it was in slow motion, wasn't it? Right, all he had to do was swing his leg, and he was there. Watching the replay back, watching Match of the Day last night. I've softened a little bit on that, to be honest. His crime was to try and take it from his left foot to his right foot. And in that time, I think it was Clark was the Portsmouth defender who sort of came in and actually did a great job from behind him. In a lot of situations, I think defenders would have wiped him out, and that would be a penalty straight away. But I think Clark did well to take the ball away from him. But yeah, it was just that touch, just waiting. How could he miss it from there? I feel with Graben, we've got to give him a bit of time. I believe that was his first 90 minutes since March. Having said that, there's fitness and there's just striker's intuition, isn't there, in front of goal? So you have to ask whether fitness would have really helped in that situation. But I thought, give the manager. Let's face it, Afobe missed a couple of sitters, already as well. I don't think Graben's necessarily any more guilty than Afobe's been of wastage there yet. But we'll see how it goes. I'm willing to give him some time and see how he goes.
Yeah, definitely. I think anyone who's listened to any of the podcasts has no doubt realised that I quite like Graben. I'm definitely on the pro-Graben side of the fence. That was one that he will have lain awake, especially if we hadn't gone on to win the game, and thought about, because he definitely should have gone with his left foot and gone first time. He must have thought he had more time than he actually did, because the defender was behind him. And, once he tried to put it onto his right foot, the defender was, like you said, very well timed block, and another defender came into the picture as well. It was almost like they came in from both sides and blocked the ball. And, the chance then appeared to have been wasted. Subject to his fitness, when he rejoined us, I saw a photo on the internet somewhere on one of the news stories, and you don't know if it was a recent photo, but it was whilst he was at Norwich playing in a match. and I did think he just looked like he put on a little bit of weight. And I was trying to look yesterday, although he wasn't that close to me. I was a little bit back in the stand. I was in row P, not quite as far back as you. And he just, I mean, he hasn't played 90 minutes since March, and it's going to take a little while for him to get completely fit again. I don't know how much he's going to feature in the 90 minutes going forward, but I think I just think he's got a few goals in him, and hopefully he'll show that before the end of the season, and then he'll be an asset, and some of that £7 million will look well spent.
Yeah.
And
I think ultimately, as a striker, you've got to score goals. It doesn't matter what else you do, really. You've got to score goals, haven't you? And I'm sure he's well aware of that, and we'll give him time. But I think questions will be asked pretty soon if he doesn't turn it around.
Yeah, I mean, questions will be asked when the club's paid £7 million. I mean, it's not down to him, the £7 million. It was obviously what it took to get him back from Norwich, but every time he misses a chance like that, unless he's scoring, every game as well, then there's going to say, well, what was the money for? So hopefully he'll get one soon. And
I think he knows that. I think Eddie knows that.
Yeah, of course.
They're not stupid, right? Yeah. So they'll work on it. We'll trust them.
Yeah, and he did redeem himself in some respects with the second goal, because it was his work. He got a short pass from Sean McDonald, kind of on the edge of the 18-yard box. He held off the defender. It was, strong work. And he got a little bit of a lucky bounce off another defender, actually, and it fell back into his path. And then he turned and sort of fired a shot in, which Thornton couldn't hold, which then dropped to Mark Pugh, who, with quite a lot of determination, came crashing in to head the ball towards the goal. And he's been credited with the goal, his 50th goal, apparently, for us. But Webster, their number 4, who came on in the middle of the second half, he kind of inexplicably kicked it into the goal. And although I was delighted that we'd scored the second goal, when I watched it back, I was actually quite surprised that Pugh had been credited with the goal.
Yeah, I think we were just watching it there, right? And you think, Webster's been a bit unfortunate there. I think someone else might have cleared that off the line. I think if Webster hadn't touched it, would it have gone in? I'm not even sure of that, to be honest. So I think Webster's got to take the blame for that. Really, managed to smash it into the roof of his own net, which is unfortunate for the guy. But like you say, we'll take that. We're not complaining. And to go back to Graven, you're right. I think. He showed great effort to actually get that shot away. And some of those will go in. Fulton probably made a good save. Luckily for us, he couldn't hold on to it. Good effort from Graben for that. And we're a little bit fortunate. I think on the whole yesterday, we should consider ourselves fairly fortunate to have come away with the win. But we'll take it.
Definitely. I don't mind Mark Pugh being credited with the goal. I mean, I'd rather he was credited with it than Webster. And I'm sure Webster is happy for that to be the case as well. It was a strange attempted clearance, because it didn't even look like he was swinging his leg away from the goal to kick the ball out. He just booted it into the goal.
He was facing towards goal, wasn't he? So it was always going to be difficult for him in the moment, I think, to hook it out. But he didn't seem to make too much of an attempt to actually get it out, other than just, like I say, crash it into the roof of his own net. But that's the way it happens.
And there was somebody else on the line behind him. I didn't see who it was. It was one of their players. And as you said, would it have gone in had Webster not touched it, or would the guy behind him perhaps have cleared it? But whatever the dubious goals panels is for the FA Cup, he's been given the goal.
To be fair, Pugh's header didn't have a lot of power on it. It kind of dropped to the floor and bobbled along a little bit. So I'm not convinced it would have gone in if Webster hadn't given it a boot.
But luckily it did go in, so we were 2-1 up, and thank goodness for that. I mean, I'd have settled for a replay definitely on the strength of our performance and their performance yesterday. They deserved it, like I said at the start. But once we were 2-1 up, overall, I mean, that was in the 83rd minute, I thought we saw the game out quite well. I mean, there was a couple of times when I couldn't really understand why we were letting them get in our half in the last few minutes and maybe giving the ball away again in the midfield. Yeah. But there was also some enjoyable, from our point of view, holding the ball in the corner type stuff.
Yeah.
From, King and Grabban and O'Kane were involved in some of that. And that was right in the corner near to where I was. And their fans were just, like a yard away from where it was happening. They were apoplectic every time, because it's so frustrating watching the opposition do that. And then the ball goes right to the line. Sometimes it looks like it's gone over, and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it gets kicked off, and you can never quite tell who it's come off. And it was it was just a relief to see it there. And then eventually you see Mike Dean looking at his watch and putting the whistle in his mouth. He's going to blow that in a minute, in a second, and he blew it. And it's just great to be in the fifth round. It wasn't pretty, as we said, but as we also said on the way home in the car, he'd rather play like that and win than be able to take the moral victory in terms of the performance, but not the actual victory in terms of the result. Wouldn't you?
I think we've been accused of being a bit naive before, right? Of trying to play the right way, and whether it's playing the ball into the corner and holding it there, or whether it's let's say being clipped a little bit more than maybe you actually were when it comes into the penalty area. Mentioning no names, Callum Wilson. I guess we can't be naive. We could be naive. We could take the moral high ground. It might not do us any favours. So, I mean, to be fair, going into the corner is not nearly as bad as diving over yourself when you get into the penalty area, in my book. So I'm quite happy with that. And like you say, just to see the game out. And personally, I wouldn't have really wanted a replay. I think we got enough to do without replays. So all good for me.
Yeah, I mean, replay in terms of the squad and Eddie Howe's point of view is the last thing they want. They want to just win the game, which they did. They don't want to have another match. It's always a burden for them, really, that they don't need. So they won't need that now. And the draw was on this evening. And because there's less balls in that transparent kind of concave thing they put it into now, and they have the camera underneath, you can actually see the ball. And they're putting their hands in and all that. And Mark Lawrenson was doing it, wasn't he? And we just don't come out. It's like every time they have the draw, we're never in the first few games drawn. We're always, and this today we were last, so it went down to, you knew the two balls that were in there, us and Everton, and are we going to be drawn at home?
Yeah.
And, Everton's a ground I haven't been there before. I'm looking forward to visiting this season. I'm definitely going to go to that when we play them in the league. But I was relieved when the home draw came out.
Yeah, I mean, by the time we got to that point, I thought, well, we're done for. Clearly, it's going to be an away game, as is usual. So, like you, I was pretty relieved. The kids celebrated the drawing a home game like we'd won the thing, so they were jumping around. So that was pretty good. And I guess it gets the old heart thumping, doesn't it, when you're waiting for the ball to come out. Chelsea came out first, I think, and then you thought, oh, here we go, right, that's us, Chelsea, and then that doesn't happen, and then you're ticking down. And then just to come out last, or second to last at least, it gets it going. But I think Everton, I think that's doable based on the showing from last time. And clearly they're having a little bit of a dodgy moment. I'm personally hoping for a 3-3 again. I was hoping Carlisle might do the same job today on Everton once they went 2-0 down, but there you go. So it's difficult. We spent so many years, didn't we, waiting for those to get the big ties in the FA Cup, and now what we really want is probably the easier ties.
We wanted Shrewsbury at home.
We wanted Shrewsbury at home. So things have flipped on their head very much so. But I don't think we can play now. I think it'll be a good cup tie. be interested, I think, from that to see the squads that get put out for that. I mean, I think Eddie's gonna stick with the second string. I think he's very loyal to his players like that. As long as they show up to a game. Although I guess it's debatable whether you can say they showed up yesterday, really, until Richie and Pugh got involved. But I think he'll stick with a relatively second string, just like he did with Villa last year. And maybe he'll have the big guns on the bench. But I think we can have a chance in it.
Yeah, I mean the events at the conclusion of the league game make this one a little bit more interesting because we could have easily, well, not easily, but it was looking like we were going to lose that game 3-1. And it was never 3-1 actually, was it? But anyway, it looked like we were going to lose that game. And then there was, which they've subsequently repeated at Chelsea, kind of late goal celebrations. And I'm always joking with my children that every time Everton win a throw-in, the fans are on the pitch. So, so I think that will be happening again. But yeah, I think in terms of selection, I mean, I didn't pay a great deal of attention to the game they played against Carlisle today, but it looked like most of their well-known first-teamers were playing. And it's a trophy, or having a run in that trophy, they've just been knocked out of the League Cup in the semi-final, that could save their season, because they're not going to get relegated. Doesn't look like they're going to get into Europe by any other means. So I can see Martinez playing his strongest team, and that especially against us, like another Premier League team. And I can see Eddie largely sticking with the Cup team and just seeing how it goes, essentially. So it would be a shame were that to hamper our progress, and as soon as we get knocked out of the Cup this year, unless we win it obviously, that is going to be the thing that is pointed at as the reason if we should play a stronger team.
Well, I think Eddie knows where his bread is buttered, right? It's in the Premier League, isn't it, right? And I think he sees the Cup kind of pragmatically. It's a chance to give the second string a bit of a workout, see what they can do, give them a chance to impress, give them a chance to gel together. Let's face it, we're in the fifth round of the Cup, right? And it's been a long time since we've been there. Now, you might argue, to be honest, I still think it's cheating, the fact that we don't go into the third round. It kind of feels a bit wrong to me, to be honest. But we'll take it. So, it's not like we're perennial winners of the FA Cup. I don't think we can complain too much at going out in the fifth round if that's what happens. I don't. I'm afraid to say, because I seem to remember you're quite a fan of the FA Cup. I can kind of take it or leave it. Pragmatically, staying in the Premier League is the goal, isn't it? And what I'd hate to see is anyone get injured or get worn out by playing cup games. So I can take it or leave it.
Yeah, and I definitely think that is Eddie Howe's point of view as well, and he won't say that in public. He'll always pay respect to the Cup and to the squad players, but his actions demonstrate how he prioritises the Cup and the league, and there's no doubt this year the league's going to be the priority. I think I am very much of the kind of Cup romantic philosophy in terms of I want us to win it, and it does seem like a dream, but it's because of the progress we've made. It's a dream that is closer to reality perhaps than it's ever been. There's still a lot of big clubs in the competition, so it might be beyond us anyway, even if we were to play our A team in every single round.
I think the magic of the Cup dies as soon as the semi-finals are played at Wembley.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt that it's not what it used to be. There's no doubt at all. It's you didn't get
teams playing their second 11s. I mean, Ron Atkinson didn't play his second 11 when we beat Man United in 1984, which makes that kind of thing all the more valid than it would be now. But it's just a chance of real glory. You think, well, you know, what's the next step for the club? And staying in the Premier League is important, and it's difficult to say. I had a conversation last night. I went out in the evening after we got back, and we were talking about, you know, what would you prefer? Would you prefer to win the FA Cup and get relegated, or to go out of the FA Cup and stay up? And it is a difficult one, you know, and a lot of people would probably be pragmatic like yourself and say, well, stay up, it's obvious. But then you think, yeah, but winning the FA Cup, I mean, it's just brilliant.
Well,
So,
I would say no. Let's be clear about it, right?
We could have both.
I think we could do the double.
Absolutely. You don't necessarily have to choose, but yeah, it'd be lovely if the run went on. So yeah, that's that. Looking forward. We'll have 3 home games in a row after Palace on Tuesday night now. So lovely to have a few home games, and it's lovely to have a draw at home as well.
Yeah.
So moving to other issues, there's been activity in and out of the club. Well, there appears to be anyway in one case, and we seem to have suddenly developed a bit of a rogues gallery at Dean Court. Lee Tomlin's got everybody's back up and left on loan to go to Bristol City, which was, well, not necessarily Bristol City, but his exit, one way or another, was inevitable. Once Eddie said in the press conference, we'll be dealing with that one internally, you thought, he won't be here next week. And out he went. And as George said on the podcast last week, it's probably a good idea that it's a loan, because should we need him next season, if we're back in the Championship, having lost a couple of our star players, you know, he is potentially a very good player, although we haven't seen it yet, certainly at Championship level. Lewis Grabban we talked about, he's come back to the club, and fair to say, split opinion, but he will look like a kind of choir boy in comparison should the latest potential recruit, Royce Wiggins, return to the club. Now this looks like, from all the information that's emerging, like it's a done deal. It hasn't been announced officially by the club, which is the only time you can say this is a done deal. So it might not go over the line because the window closes in less than 24 hours. But his potential return, it's fair to say, is not going down well with the fans, is it?
No. And I don't know whether Eddie particularly cares about that, to be honest. I think probably Eddie knows the job he can do, and Wiggins probably knows the job that Eddie wants him to do. And I think between them, that's probably enough for them, regardless of what people actually think. I don't know. Split on that. I mean, footballers come and go, don't they? And there's always, no matter how footballers sort of leave the club, people always think once they've left, that's it. You know, it's they don't love us anymore. They just want more money and that sort of stuff. And I guess people like Wiggins haven't done anything to particularly disabuse that notion and win any fans. But I'm one of those in the camp that if he's wearing a Bournemouth shirt, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Clearly Tomlin sort of slightly peed on his chips with some of the activity on Twitter, which didn't endear him. And Tomlin, I always thought was a strange signing anyway. I think knowing the lengths that we sort of tend or claim to go to in terms of making people fit in terms of attitude. Tomlin's got previous. He's clearly not the fittest player on the planet, and in a team which is outrunning everyone else in the Premier League, it's always a bit of a strange signing, I think. I'm going to give Wiggins the benefit of the doubt. People may not like me for that, but once he pulls on the shirt, he's a Bournemouth player. I mean, he may not get to put on the shirt at the end of the day. Interestingly, you know, the quote was that he wasn't happy at Wednesday not playing first team football. I think he's had 8 or 9 appearances this season, and to be fair, I don't see him getting too many more at Bournemouth as long as Charlie Daniels doesn't get clattered. I don't think it's going to be the case here. So I'm a wait and see on that one personally.
Yes, somewhat ironic that his replacement, if it can be described as a replacement, at Sheffield Wednesday is Joe Bennett, who didn't get to set foot on the pitch here before he went back to Aston Villa and then back out on loan again. I think it's a loan. And yeah, Wiggins has returned. He's been signed now 4 times, if this goes through, by Eddie Howe. Eddie obviously likes him as a player, and he's obviously happy that he's not going to be problematic off the pitch. He didn't know Lee Tomlin very well, I don't think, before he signed him. And yeah, so now we are left with something of a dilemma. I mean, he did have some very choice and colourful words to say on his departure, which I was reminded of today, one of which was the worst word in the English language. And some money agitated for a move during a transfer window, the year we lost in that playoff game at Huddersfield, and afterwards, even when the window had shut, he was still, you know, being difficult. But Lee Bradbury was the manager then. I mean, he can issue an apology or, you know, do one of those things on Cherry's player where he says, well, you know, that's all water under the bridge and I want to do well for Bournemouth and blah, blah, blah now. Some people won't forgive him. And I think that football fans sometimes love, even though they don't admit it, to have something to be offended about and to bear a grudge. And it's great to have your pantomime villains and all that. But yeah, I mean, I'm certainly with you on the, you know, if he's on the pitch playing for us, then I want him to do well. And also, as you said, the likelihood of us seeing him much is slim, and he's probably got his best chance, barring injury, to play in the cup games.
Yeah.
So if my little fantasy comes true, and we were to win the FA Cup, it could be that he plays for us in the cup final, scores the winning goal, and then all of those who are currently beside themselves with indignation at his potential return would. Yeah, I mean, I may be going a bit far with that scenario, but yeah, I think if he it'll be stage managed, but if he issued some sort of apology, it won't be grovelling or anything, but just said, well, maybe I was a bit younger and I had my head turned and things weren't the same at the club as they are now, and I, really spoke out of turn, and I'm sorry about that. Then it'll probably not please everybody, but there isn't really a lot else he can do, is there? So
he's never going to please people, I kind of think we should pride ourselves, because when I sort of scout around the internet and you look at other people's message boards, I remember going on the West Ham message board after we beat them at the start of the season, and they were scathing about their own players. They didn't have a good word about their own squad. I see that in a lot of other places, and I think that's a real shame. And thinking about Graben gets the abuse now as well, even though he's only just back, and I heard some of it yesterday. And you think it's not helpful, right? To us as a team. I mean, you're right. Maybe people need their pantomime villains, but maybe we should find them on other teams rather than our own, right? And I think we should pride ourselves on, without wishing to indulge in kind of mawkish sentimentality. Together, anything is possible. I think we should try and live and breathe that, even after a couple of pints. And like I said, I trust Eddie. He must know what he's doing. He's a smart guy, right? And I'm sure he's going to be more than aware that this is going to get a few people's backs up. So I don't think he'd do it without good reason. And we'll have to see how that works out at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think that I did read today somewhere, I think it was on the Vitals forum, somebody said that it's okay to
vent your frustration on somewhere like Vitals, but it's a different story to do it during the match.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I guess something like a discussion forum on the internet, I guess that's the place for that kind of thing if you want to air it outside of your own kind of mates or whatever. Whereas when you're at the match, you know, you want to... I mean, everybody gets fed up with players the way they're playing sometimes, but generally, you know, you want to be behind them when they set foot on the pitch and kind of, at least for those 90 minutes, forget any other scruples you may have about their past. I mean, there's a difference between... I always think this about football, the way that we treat players who are perceived to have done wrong. And I mean, with Royce Wiggins, he obviously didn't think before he spoke and acted in that situation, but his crimes are nowhere near as bad as many crimes I could mention that we hear about every day on the news, and yet people like him in football in those situations get treated, you know, as if they have committed crimes of the most heinous nature. And I know it's the sort of knockabout way that football crowds behave, but, you know, I think we have to at least see both things. One being, we want to be able to air our grievances and frustrations. The other being that, you know, is it really that serious? And is it that serious that we can't put it to one side when the player's on the pitch? So, I think that I don't think we'll have too much time to have a pop in because he won't be on the pitch that much. But should he come on, should he play in the cup games, then I'm definitely going to be, right behind him, like I am with all the other players. So I think that's fair enough, isn't it?
Yeah, why not?
Exactly.
The cherries.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, thank you, Mark, for welcoming me into your home. I didn't have to travel far this evening.
My recording studio.
Yeah, and
I hope you enjoyed the green room.
Yeah, thanks for the lift yesterday. So it's been a great weekend, and thanks for making your debut on the show.
Great, thank you very much, Michael.
Great stuff from Mark there, and it was an enjoyable change to record face to face, as I only had to pop next door for this one. Back to our quest for Premier League survival on Tuesday night, and fingers crossed we can clip the Eagles' wings at Selhurst Park. Swap the cherries in all departments, and goodbye.
This podcast is sponsored by the White Bear, your local micropub on Southbourne Grove, where you can't watch the game, but you can definitely talk about it. Head to the White Bear on any AFCB match day wearing your team shirt and receive 30p off each pint. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.
1-1 it's Abbey. 1-1 it's Abbey. He plays for Bournemouth with Benik Afobe. 1-1 it's Abbey. 1-1 it's Abbey. 1-1 it's Abbey. 1-1 it's Abbey. He plays for Bournemouth with Benik Afobe. 1-1 it's Abbey. 1-1 it's Abbey. 1-1 it's Abbey.